Oh, g'day, my name's James Brayshaw, alongside cricketing legends Matthew Hayden and Greg Blewett. We will be delivering a brand new podcast every week called All Over Bar the Cricket. What is it? Very simple. It's the pub test for the summer of cricket, and it is always summer somewhere. We're not going to tell you what the scoreboard looks like. We're going to take you behind the scoreboard, tell you what it meant, what it felt like, and who stuffed it up or who saved the day. And this is a nice time for me to bring in these two legends, Greg Blewett and Matty Hayden. Welcome to you both.
JB, great to be here.
Hello, boys.
Got your tent finally working, Blewie, which we appreciate because it's taken you a while to come to the table.
Had a very smooth morning so far, thanks, JB. So everything's running smoothly, and I cannot wait for the start of this podcast, lads.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me tell you a bit about what we're going to talk about. England's behaviour in the recent series against India, not only Lords, but the recent test match where things blew up. And I know, Matty, you want to talk a bit about Steve Waugh and the spirit piece when he was your captain. Blewey's just come back from the West Indies. What did that look like? What does Sam Konstas' next 18 months look like? The Batathon in Darwin for Australia A, the IPL. Haydos, of course, just come back from there. Was that the best series ever? And you, of course, had to very quickly exit. We're going to find out why. And then we finish with the finishing five. But, Blewie, let's start with the West Indies. You're just back. Extraordinary series. 3-0, obviously, in the test. And now 5-0, which Mitch Marsh in the T20s. What was the Caribbean like for you? And tell us both, boys, what it was like to play cricket there.
Yeah, well, the Caribbean, it was a great tour. It really was. I mean, like a lot of the test match cricket at the moment, it was bloody fast. I mean, all the games are over in 3 days. So had a real trend to the series. Every 2 days of the test matches were really, really close. Like you couldn't split the teams, but I think you always felt like, you know, the experience of the Australians were going to get them over the line. I think the Australians winning the 3 tosses really helped as well on difficult surfaces. So that was the other thing too, JB and Haydos, was that both teams, the top orders really struggled. So that those first 20, 25 overs, the damage was done. It really was. 2 good, really bowling attacks. But yeah, both top orders really struggled to get through to 20, 25 overs. And then, you know, scores of 200, 250 were really good. So I think from an Australian point of view, they're really happy with the result, no doubt. You know, 3-0, and then obviously going into the T20s, winning that 5-0 as well. So on the surface, it was a very successful tour for the Australians. I suppose the question marks are still around the top order for the Australians. How does that look going into the Ashes?
I might get to that in just a moment with both of you. But me, Haydos, watching these scores come back from the West Indies, the T20 series, in a lot of ways, was almost more disappointing because that's what the West Indies are good at. They haven't been good at Test cricket for a while. Amazing Test match in Brisbane with Shamar Joseph and all of that. But if you look at their body of work over a while, it hasn't been great. They have played bloody good T20 cricket. So to be whitewashed in that, 5-0, that was a shame.
Well, there was a special call of meeting, wasn't there, after the Test match where they got bowled out for sub-30. The greats of the game, Viv Richards, Clive Lloyd, these guys, they identified what I'm sure our listeners and viewers will identify, and that was that they just can't bat. They've got a very average technique. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to miss Australia either because for me, I think there was one score over 300. The majority of the scores were sub-250. Our top order looked in absolute disarray. In fact, our middle order looked in absolute disarray as well. So there's lots of homework for the Aussie boys to do ahead of the summer as well against what could be a really good English attack. They just can't handle the moving, swinging ball or even any movement laterally, and especially up and down. Their techniques aren't allowing them to bat time. You know, when you've got the highest score for the series being 75, I think Smith for us 73, and you've got blokes winning man of the matches with 2 half centuries, it just, like Carey did, it just means that, yeah, the conditions were average, but I'll ask Blue this question. If that had been your generation, Blue, you two were there a number of times, do you reckon that 220, 200 was enough on those wickets? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I think a good score was between 250 and 300. I do hate us, and I've gone back to look at some of our tours as well. I was there in 95. I was there in, I think it was 99 as well. It really did vary from test match to test match. I mean, yes, there was some high scores in amongst it, but there was some bloody low scores as well. So, look, I don't know about you, Haydos, but I found batting in the Caribbean challenging. I thought, probably naively, I thought I was going to go over to the Caribbean and face a good fast bowling attack on good fast bowling pitches, and I couldn't have been any more wrong. They were generally sort of fairly lowish surfaces, and there was reverse swing, and it spun a bit as well. So, I mean, some of the in 95 in particular, some of the scores were quite low. But then, when we headed to Jamaica, we got a score of about 500. So it was a bit of a mixed bag, Haydos. But I know what you're saying about the techniques and the swinging ball. But I will say it was bloody challenging, mate. It really was. I mean, the ball that they used, the Duke's ball, really swung. So yes, there was some lateral movement, but the up and down bounce as well probably wasn't as prominent, I reckon, on my tours as what I saw in this one I just completed.
JB, I think that was a bit of a segue to you asking Blewie whether or not his front pad was getting blown off by Ambrose and Walsh and Bishop, I think it might have been.
I am going to get, it won't surprise you, Dos, to know, I'm going to get to his pads later. I want to ask you about this. Sam Konstas.
2 away and 1 in, bang, Blewie often crumbled his front knee, dislocated.
He used to have legs that thick, so the pad used to just wrap around the whole thing. You could never get him to fit his legs. Tell us about...
Is that Rod Marsh talking now, is it? Like billiard table legs there.
Tell us about Sam Konstas, big Haydos, because we were all so excited when he got picked. We all know Australia need an injection of youth. It was a weird way he played in Melbourne, but it worked, and it excited the whole Australian sort of public.
It still does.
And since then, it's fallen away for him. Yeah. But we want him to work. So what should his next 18 months look like?
Yeah, it still does excite us. That's the bottom line. He's a great young talent. He's a really good kid. He's got a big personality, and I think it's a personality that everyone wants to share and acknowledge as well. So they're all sort of ticks from a marketing point of view. But when rubber meets the road, it's actually about performances. Yeah, your only commodity as a batsman is to score runs. Now, Sam needs to score runs. He needs to score runs at every level he can possibly get at. Because at the moment, both edges of his bat are being so heavily challenged. You look at the way that he actually tries to construct his base technique, and he's a million miles away from the ball. In fact, I put a rubber stamp in the way that the entire top 6 of Australia's batting lineup, and now you have to exclude Smith because he's a freak. He just does Smith things. The others have got no foundation to their footwork. Usman Khawaja, he doesn't move his feet. Sammy doesn't move his feet. And if he does try and move his feet, he tries to charge, and then he gets really onside of the ball, and then he starts wafting his hands away from the ball, which again challenges both edges. He got dropped twice in his runs. I think he got 5 runs in the end. But the reality is he's got to find a neutral position in his head. Now, that's a technical side. On a mental side, we all know, Blue, that when you get to the highest level, everyone knows better about your game than what you do. You've got to find a peace in that. It's really hard to get that stillness of thought, that composure that you require to play Test cricket. And the fact is, for him, he's just got to go forward. There's no point looking back now at Melbourne, and what a magnificent summer experience for us all that was, as you point out, JB. He has to look at now finding a way to stay still enough in his head to find someone that's going to be a really good voice of reason for him and start to look at his mental state of mind as much as anything and just understand that everyone has been through it. I mean, when I look at my own career, from 94 to 2000, I played something like 7 tests and I averaged 20. I even had Glenn McGrath saying, mate, I averaged more than what you do in the last year in the change rooms. And it hurts. It's like, mate, he's got to find a way to bust a gut to get better. Because as Wayne Bennett once said to me, don't get bitter, get better. You're going to have such a huge weight on your shoulders for as long as you possibly can. So he's got to find a peace in that.
Blewie?
Yeah, look, I really felt for Sam, especially towards the end, because I I mean, it was showing in his fielding as well. Dropped a couple of really easy catches. There was a simple misfield that just went straight through his hands. And seeing him walk off in both innings in Jamaica, I mean, he was just shattered. And he's 19 years of age, trying to learn and find his way in international cricket. So, look, I think with Sam, to me, and I know you spoke about the footwork there, Haydos. I know you're really big on that. I'm not so big on that. I'm all for about a stable base. And I think of Verinder Sehwag, I think of Damien Martin, they didn't move their feet much either. But what they did, when the point of contact, they were still and stable. They had such great bases. And I just thought, whether it was anxiety or whatever it was, Sam was he did not have a stable base. And you're right, both edges were being challenged. I think at the start of the series, he was worried about the ball coming back into him. And in fact, what happened was generally the ball that was leaving him, he got exposed with the outside edge. So there's work to do, JB, put it that way. And I think for Sam now, he'll go back into the queue of guys in the opening spot. And I think those 4 Shield games are a complete bat-off. They really are. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 guys that are going to put their hand up. If Sam doesn't do something extraordinary in those 4 Shield games, then he's not going to play the summer. And then I hope he just plays Shield cricket for a couple of years and really, fine-tune his game and find a way that he think he'll be really successful at international level.
Well, that's a good point. And you talk technically about his game, and they're all really valid points. But what I want to see him do is go back into Shield cricket and grind them out. Have some big summers, 900, 1,000 runs. Elevate himself above everyone else and show the world, as well as the Australian selectors, that I am the best young player in the country. And he's got the talent to do that. All right, let's talk about...
Just quickly... when you look at your 94-95 season, you played that Shield final against us, which you lost. Thank you very much. But the reality of it is that you got over 1,000 runs that series, if I'm right. And also you had Buff that got 1,000 runs. Yep. Blewie, inevitably you got 1,000,000 runs as well. But you then didn't get picked on an Australia A tour because the level of cricket is so good. I mean, we were pushed so hard. If it wasn't Blewie, it was Matthew Elliott. If it wasn't Matthew Elliott, it was Mark Taylor. It wasn't Mark Taylor, it was Michael Slater. And they were all guys that we had to barge past. That's really the success story of the Australian cricket team batting journey. Now, my challenge is to this current mob is to get better every time that you go out and bat because you're getting pushed. If you're in grade cricket and you're not making hundreds, then there's no way in the world that you should be trying to get to Sheffield Shield cricket or be picked in Sheffield Shield cricket. Simple solution.
Well, we're actually going to touch on that a little later on because the Australia A team's just been playing in Darwin. And Ollie Peake, who is a bright young talent, has played in that game. That was his second first-class game. I mean, it's unthinkable back in our day that a young bloke would be picked to play for Australia A in just his second game. All right, the West Indies. Tell us about that because Ernie Els, we all love our golf. Ernie Els is a phenomenal golfer. Blewie, he won 4 majors. We love him, the Big Easy. But we don't want to hear about how he knocked down a sand wedge from 80. We want to hear about what happened on his private plane where the plane would land DOS and he would demand all passengers stand up and surf it in. You weren't allowed on his plane unless you surfed in the landing. So tell us both, Haydos and Blewie, about touring the West Indies, some stories, what's it like after play.
You go, Haydos.
Well, I mean, I love the West Indies, JB and Blue. It's one of those things you sort of get into this certain rhythm. When I think back to, the couple of Frank Worrell trophies that we played there in the World Cup.
Did you say Frank Worrell?
I did say Frank Worrell.
Hang on, let's check in with Brendan Julian on how you say it.
As long as you put the pause in.
I think back to the World Cup though. Probably my favourite tour there for obvious reason. We went through undefeated. Glenn McGrath was named man of the series. He had a magnificent tournament, but Gilly didn't turn up on time. He had the birth of Archie, his last little fella, and he had about I think it was 7 to 10 days where he wasn't in the West Indies. You're in trouble in the West Indies. Firstly, when you check in, your rooms are never ready. So you have at least 8 or 9 rump bunches by the time that you actually land. Then you find yourself on the beach smoking a big Cuban cigar, cuddled up to some Rastafarian that's inevitably just wafting the other sort of smoke that you probably shouldn't be smelling. And you just think, oh, I'm in the West Indies. How good is this? So Gilly, he arrives coming in hot. Now, he had the theory with jet lag that you just drown the bastard. Simple as that. So he comes in. He has at least 4 or 5 nights drowning his jet lags. He had lots of companions with him, I might add. I'll put my hand up being one of them. But it got to a point in the time in the tournament where John Buchanan pulled him aside and has said, Gilly, any danger of you turning up on this tour? And he went, you're right, Buck. I know. I'm vice captain. I need the lift. I know. But you negotiated one more night on the piss. And then Gilly turned up and everything seemed to sort of work itself out. But look, so many stories. I could reel off about 20, I've got to say.
Yeah, I loved it as well, JB. My first tour in 95 was my first ever Australian tour. And there was a young Ricky Ponting on that trip as well, who we both know really well. And I'm going to completely throw him under the bus, right? So
good. He deserves it.
So third test match was in Trinidad. And we'd lost, we drew the second test. We'd won the first test. So we're 1-0 up going into the third test match. So it was a 4 test match series. The Windies were desperate for a win, so they spiced the pitch up. Anyway, that's the test match that Curtly Ambrose had to be dragged away from Steve Waugh.
Yeah, right? That's right.
And I'm in next, Haydos, and I'm just thinking, mate, what are you doing, Tugger? After seeing what Dean Jones had done to Curtly as well with the sweatband. So I'm going, mate, do not fire him up. But what no one knows was that very first morning I had breakfast with a very young Ricky Ponting. He must have been 21, 22. And he's bubbling. And I'm like, mate, what's going on? And I looked at his lips and they're like bright purple. And I thought, oh, no. He's tied one on here. And anyway, I got it out of him.
Not playing in the game.
What's that?
He's not playing in the game.
He's not playing in the game, but he's one of the spare batters. So you've got to be sort of... But he obviously thought, no, there's not going to be an injury. Anyway, found out he had not been to bed. And anyway, we rock up at the ground, Haydos, and as you know, the spare players look after some of the warm-ups. So we are 20 metres away trying to get some catches. He could not hit us. So we're diving full length either side, could not lay mid on any ball. So then he starts, right, go back, I'll give you some high balls. The high balls are going into the crowd. People are getting hit on the head. But then the game starts, right, and a couple of wickets fall. So I go in to get padded up. And as I go in there, I notice in the corner, there's punter, head down in the physio bench, fast asleep. First day of the test match. Anyway, big appeal. Booney's out. So Booney comes in, and Booney was well known for, throwing tantrums and that. So I'm getting padded up, and then Booney comes in, throws the bat around, starts swearing. And I look over to punter, and he lifts his head up out of the hole, and he's like shook his head, going, Booney, is there any danger, mate? I'm trying to get some sleep. Mate, this is a young man who's never played for Australia, and so I know he changed his ways, Haydos, after that. Yeah. But, mate, dead asleep, first morning of a test match. Shocking.
Well, how'd you go, Blue? Just quickly, how'd you go on that test?
17 off 24, Haydos. Not bad.
Teeing off, nice.
Yeah.
How dismissed how?
Slashing at one, caught behind, I think.
All right, we swing across to England and India. It has been must-watch television. I know you boys have maybe not seen it. You've been away with the family after the IPL. Haydos and Blewie have been in the West Indies. I've seen a lot of it. It has been a cracking series. But the cracks have just started to show between these two teams in the last 2 games. We saw at Lords, Shubman Gill, who's a very measured operator, blow up late one day because the English opening pair refused to face 2 overs. I'm going to get to that in a minute. And then, of course, the spirit of cricket invoked when Ben Stokes tried to end the game and the Indian batters said, no, I don't want to end. I actually want to make 100, so we're going to stay out here. But let me take you back to the Lords scenario, because for me, boys, this is such an easy fix in cricket. 7 minutes to play, Blewie, end of the day's play. English opening pair come out. They take an hour to get out to the middle. Like everyone's ready to play and they're nowhere to be seen. And then, I don't know how many balls into the over, Crawley has a ball sort of graze his elbow. He calls the physio out. The physio spends an hour out there trying to fix something that, the Indians claim wasn't even there in the first place. And in the end, they only face one over. And Shubman Gill blows up about it, which is fair enough. So for me, and I've thought this for 100 years, this is the easiest fix of all time. Just get the umpire to say, I'm not starting the clock until the bowler's ready to run in and bowl the first ball. So that's when the game starts in that situation. But then, Blewie and Haydos, if the physio's called, the umpire goes, right, I'm stopping the clock. You can take as long as you like to fix him, but I'm not starting it again until you're over your bat to face the next ball. So we guarantee we get 7 minutes in. For me, it would eradicate all of that garbage, all the time wasting. Batters would know it's a waste of time anyway, and we'd get the full 7 minutes in.
Yeah,
I don't understand why we don't do that.
Yeah, so it's like a time on as such, like in football or whatever. Yep. So, yeah, I agree. Or otherwise, why can't we just have, like we do on the last day, you go into the final hour and it's a minimum, is it 15 overs?
15 overs.
So it doesn't matter about time wasting and stuff. So
agreed.
I don't understand, similar to that, Bray, is why not, if there's 7 minutes left in the day's play, why don't the umpires just say, well, there's going to be a minimum of 2 overs?
Yep.
And have so no matter what happens as well, there's got to be 2 overs bowled. I agree. They're running the clock down, but it's obviously not in the laws of the game. I'm not sure why.
No, it isn't. But it would be a simple change for me. And Dos, what we see a lot of now in Test cricket, which does all of our heads in, is 20 minutes into a session, 12th man, 13th man, 14th man comes on, drinks, gloves, halt in play. So again, I would give the umpire a game clock and just go, right, stop. I'm not starting it again until you're ready to face the next ball, because we're not having our day's play chomped up with that interruption 20 minutes into a session. For me, it's easy.
You're just grumpy, you two. Simple as that.
Yes.
No, I'll tell you what, how idiotic are England, though? When you look at the Test World Championship cycles, they, and in particular the last cycle, not so much this one, they won 10 out of 11 games, and they got done so heavy on points in terms of their over rate. So that's a crazy number, right? 10 out of 11 games. That means they've got a winning percentage north of 80, so 90. So they ended up on 40 or 42, yep. I think they rounded up. So, bring it on, England. Keep doing it. I mean, other sides South Africa have now won, Australia's won, India have been there twice and haven't won, New Zealand have won. I mean, they must be cheering at these mugs, because in the World Test Championship, now, I love the World Test Championship. I don't know about you boys, but I reckon it's been a great process in Test match cricket. The balancing up process, though, means that you have to be sharp on your over rate, and they are not. Every cycle has been heavily affected by the fact that they've had slow over rates.
All right. What about the finish to the game in Manchester? So, firstly, let's just recognise India's incredible resilience. Batting for 2 days after losing 2 wickets in the first over, everyone looking at that said they are gone. Yep. So that is just a phenomenal performance. But then Ben Stokes saying, righto, well, we've now decided that we can't win, so we've decided the game's finished. For me, Blewie, the Indian batting pair had every right to say, no, we don't have to agree to that. We'll finish when we want to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, all the games that I've ever played in, when you get to that situation, is there's an agreement between the two teams, right? So, obviously, Stokes wanted to get off. The Indian guy said, no, well, quite rightly, James, they worked their absolute asses off, and they were very entitled to stay out there. And also with another test match still to go as well. So, England had dominated that game. They fought their way back. And you know what? They thought, bugger it, we're going to get to our milestones. And then when that didn't happen, obviously they had the shits on, right? So, and then to cough up the stuff that Harry Brook coughed up was just, And as you said, it's been a great series and it's been a great game. Yes, it's a lot of people who don't know cricket would go, well, it's a draw, but some of the great games are draws, right? We know that. So to finish in that fashion was just poor. It really was. And I think at the time they got a bad read on the game, the Poms. And I think if they honestly reflected back in those couple of days after the Test match, I think they'd agree that they handled that really poorly.
All right.
Yeah,
So
but the other thing is, the other thing is, they started like Blue did at the start of this podcast, the Poms, with his bottom lip starting to quiver. And I tell you what, England, be warned, that 21-hour flight, it's not going to get any better. The Australian press are going to be honing in on that.
Yeah.
We as broadcasters are going to be honing in on that, looking for any little crack, because guess what? When we go there, we absolutely cop it. You know, so when Poms come here and they expect there to be plain sailing, there ain't going to be plain sailing. To me, it's as simple as that they choose to get on their high horse whenever they want something, and when they don't, they turn into Greg Blewett's bottom lip and it starts to quiver.
There it is. Now, so for me, I totally agree. So all Ben Stokes had to do, and I'm sure if he had his time again, he'd probably think about doing, is wander over to the Indian batters and say, we're happy to wind it up now if you want, but we understand you're both nearing milestones. If you want to keep batting to get them, we understand that too. That was all the sentence needed to be. But what about in that press, Matty Hayden? Moral hypocrisy has been thrown at them. Spirit of cricket only invoked when it suits England. They pick and choose. I mean, they're welcoming this negativity.
Yeah, look, the spirit of cricket was only attached to the laws of the game in 2000. You know, so the preamble, the spirit of cricket. So the game, I mean, what was the first Test match started at the MCG back in 1877. So the game has been going on for well over 2 centuries before the spirit of the game came in. Now, in Australian cricket, the spirit of the game was promoted by Stephen Waugh as a young captain taking over from Tubbs back in 99, I think it was. And we started to discuss what that looked like, but in the context of how we wanted to play, not only within the rules of the game, but what we found as Baggy Green and the custodians of that culture, how to be professional, because the game had certainly changed. I mean, my contract went from $100,000 in 97 to almost $1 million in 98, 99, you know, because that's what the game, after the ACA sort of busted up the revenues of the game, and we started to get a greater responsibility around what it was like to be professional. And it certainly wasn't putting your head in a groove in 95 after a massive night on the gas because you weren't playing. We had to address all those things. What was kind of acceptable to us within the context of the game? We're a heavy sledging side. And, you know, that was
so
sort
did
of...
that change? Because Steve Waugh, the whole
bit.
mental disintegration thing was what everyone sort of aligned with that team.
Yeah, and I think it was the way that we went about and being probably smart about how we were doing that. Like going back to the West Indies, I remember we had this raving team meeting about how we were never going to sledge Brian Lara, and that was in 2002-3, I think that year. Never sledged Brian Lara team meeting. It was absolutely farcical because he had to walk past me at gully, and I just couldn't help myself. I was like, you going to walk today, Brian? Because we always thought he was a bit like, you know, he'd walk whenever he want, a bit like England, follow the rules when they want. So immediately Brian turned to me and I had to basically bolt to third man with my hand up going, talk to the back of the hand, Brian. And then guess what? Steve Waugh came in. It was like this big McGrath came in. It was like this procession of sledges that followed. So, you know, that obviously didn't go too well. But I think we played within our own spirit of the game. And we certainly wanted to address how we weren't going to bring the game or tarnish the game or the brand of cricket in Australia. And I mean, inevitably, there's always going to be a fine line. And you tend to get worse behaviour as the series goes on, right? Like you see each other, like England now and India, you see each other so much. You spend every day trying to get up for a game and inevitably the tensions boil over. You add a couple of really bad decisions into all that mix as well, or things that just don't go your way, and you get grumpy. And that's when player behaviour sort of needs to, and a good leader needs to come into his own.
So,
Hey,
Blue,
Gam, Gambier's getting on well with the groundsman too at the Oval, so he's not getting grumpy either. And talking about getting more professional, so Haydos's contract went from 100 grand to $1 million. Mine went from 250 to zero. So that's I went the other way, Haydos.
Mate, you stepped off the boat just as I was serving up the cocktails.
So, Blewie, you know, because we played together against Victoria, you know how much they hated me as a unit.
Everyone hated you, mate. So that was just how it was.
I walked out, Goss, about my 5th or 6th year. I walked out into the middle at the MCG. Merv Hughes was bowling into total silence.
Yeah.
And middle of the leg, and I looked, and no one had said a word. And I'm talking about Darren Berry, Dean Jones, Simon O'Donnell, Shane Warne. You know, normally
Gobsters.
You walked out and you couldn't hear yourself think you were copping it that hard. This time I walked out and there was nothing. So I batted for about 8 balls, and then Merv comes in. Still nothing, not a word said. Merv comes in, bowls me a bouncer, finishes about a metre away, which he always did. Looked past me to Dino, and he goes, Dino, I can't do this anymore. I fucking hate this bloke so much.
Oh, let's go on the power of silence.
They all just pissed themselves laughing. That was the end of it.
Tell me you got 100. Tell me you got 100.
He always got 100 against Vicks.
Yeah, there you go.
Tell me about the IPL. Electric series, just incredible. You were there for the whole thing. But this one had a twist because of the danger factor at the back end.
Yeah, it's been a great survivor. It's lasted, incredible events historically for India. Elections, it got moved, remember, in the second year to South Africa. We had COVID, obviously, and it seemed to survive that. It moved, across to Dubai and the Middle East. But this year was very unique and very dangerous and actually, quite scary. And I had a touch with death, literally. We were playing a game. I'd flown from Mumbai overnight to Delhi because there wasn't a connecting flight with Punjab's home cricket ground, which was up in Dharamshala. Magnificent ground,
Beautiful.
magnificent Blue Hay, like right in the foothills of the Himalayas. You got the Dalai Lama that lives in this little village there as he came across the border into India to be housed, called McLeod Ganj. So some very special historical sort of place as well. But by the time I landed in Delhi to get a connecting flight to Dharamshala, there was no airport that was open. So it was at that time that coincided with the incursion of Pakistan back into India and vice versa. So we're talking about drones scarily, navigating across the skies, taking out ground to air missiles. And it was just eerie. So what we had to do is take a car via Chandigarh up to Dharamshala. Now that's a 11 and a half, 12-hour drive.
Ooh.
By the time that we reached the venue, we were told that the game was going to proceed. And we're also about half an hour before we got on air, we were provided a security message, which was an alert message that if the light towers were to go out, it's not a technical issue. It's actually a sign that this venue has been compromised and there will be an emergency evacuation response that will proceed. I was mid-sentence with my usual garbage on air and first light tower goes out. So I've let the spectators and the fans know, look, the first light tower's gone out. Second one went out almost immediately. Next minute, security came in like a blanket, dropped my mic literally mid-sentence, and we were ushered out of the ground. And when you think about what we don't know, that's probably the scary thing. But all lights then went out. These missiles, from what I understand, actually target, the light areas. And we are the only light because there is the Himalayas and that's it. Blanket of darkness everywhere else. So now we're in the stairwell going down. And like everyone, you think about Pakistan being 60K away from that particular zone. You would be instantly vaporized in that time. So I had a moment of dread, I must admit, to the point where I thought, when I return home, if I get home, I'm not going to waste any more time in Dharamshala. So myself and Murali Kartik, the great spinner for India, we decided to drive out again that night. So we literally had an hour back at the hotel, packed our game, all our gear up, said our goodbyes to punter and crew, and left. And that drive was, again, really frightening because it's not a lot of sealed roads or anything that, happens through that drive down off the Himalayas. Poor old drive, honestly. I reckon he's got no left side of his ribs because every time I thought he was falling asleep, I'd just throw a punch at him and then give him a Red Bull. And if that didn't work, we'd stop for some chai or some coffee on the way. And Kartik ended up driving a couple of hours. But by the time all the boys from that were playing up there got back to Delhi, myself and Grace Hayden, my daughter, were in different ports of India doing the IPL. We ended up flying Cathay Pacific back through Hong Kong. And we were home basically by the time they even got back to Delhi.
I was just about to say, to people that haven't been to India, and you boys have spent a lot more time there than I have, an 11-hour drive in India is not like driving from Adelaide to Melbourne. I mean,
No.
It is, that's hard driving.
But it's camels, buffaloes, goats, tut-tuts, buses, trucks, trains. Yep. It's like a scene out of Faulty Towers. It's just something going wrong the whole time. But yeah, it's what makes the tournament really special as well, right? Because you get these, 3 or 4 pods of production teams. They move around the country, mobilise all the cameras and everything that happens that you see when it's brought to life, on the broadcast. And it's a pretty tight-knit family. It's a very special tournament because it stops 1.4 billion people. It's got a population that's on or under the age of 35, so it's an extremely popular sport. It's telecast in about 7 different languages, from Telugu to Hindi. You've got Karnataka or Canada, I think the language is Tamil, English, obviously. So you've got a squadron of various languages. In fact, they're even doing AI now and converting an English voice into a Hindi voice, and it actually sounds like Hindi. So the technology is really, amplifying the tournament. Its reach now that it's on digital with GeoStar and also television with Star just means that the numbers of people watching, we're talking 500-600 million people watching it. You imagine our biggest sporting event here in Australia is probably the AFL Grand Final, which, 3.5, 4?
4, yeah.
Yeah, so State of Origin, again, 3.5. Maybe the Boxing Day Test match. We saw extraordinary numbers last year, but I don't even think that'd be close to those sort of numbers. Well, imagine 600, 700 million people watching. It's really just extraordinary.
Blewie, let's move to quickly, because we've got to get to the finishing 5, to the Australia A Batathon in Darwin. Jake Weatherald, 183. Jason Sanger, a double century. Ollie Peake, we touched on before, who I really think is a talented young kid. He made 92. Are we taking anything from that? Is Jason Sanger someone that could play Test cricket for us this summer?
Yeah, I'm really big on Jason Sanger. For people that don't know, he came through the New South Wales system, and he was a bit like a Konstas, I suppose. Like, the next, he was going to be the next big thing, and then I think he basically struggled at New South Wales, and he'd be able to tell you better than me why that happened, but then lost his contract, came to South Australia, earned his way into that Shield team, and I think he played the last 6 Shield games for South Australia and scored 4 first-class centuries, including a really good 100 to get South Australia over the line in the final. So he is definitely one, and I think technically one that can have a real crack at international level. So he could be a smoky for that. If there is a question mark around the number 3 spot, I think Green definitely will start the Ashes at number 3 and deserves that spot after his play in the West Indies. But in terms of the Australia A series, James, I thought I wasn't necessarily... I think the high scoring and the flat pitches against a Sri Lanka A team, I don't think necessarily the selectors would take a huge amount out of that. I think what they should be looking at is the style of the players involved, so, the Weatheralds and the Sangers, these sort of guys, and just sort of, get a firmer idea of what they offer in terms of the way they play the game and what they think is suited if they want a particular style looking forward to the Australian cricket team.
Can you get 100 and are you technically sound? I mean, on very simple terms, to me, what we've seen now over the last 2 years is a bunch of players that aren't technically sound enough to cope with the rigours of Test match cricket. And I don't care what conditions they are. So if Sangha is that person, Blue, that you're saying is technically sound, I would argue that get him in, because the chances of him making runs at Test match cricket, especially in the surfaces that we know we're going to go straight over to Perth, we're going to come back to Brisbane, we're going to go to Adelaide under a pink ball, they're going to be really technically challenging conditions, especially if we understand that, some of their key players are going to stand up. Stokes has been injured overnight as well, so, we hope that he gets back. But that's the point. You've got to be technically sound. I'm really surprised to hear you talking about not moving at the ball because, gee, I reckon that's a foundation. I mean, you're a great mover to the ball, Blue. You had a big, long stride. Yeah, technically, like me, we used to get our pads in front of the stumps because we made a big movement. But you take that every day of the week as opposed to just being hands players, only hands players. Because both edges of the bat then becomes really vulnerable. And I don't think in Test match cricket that's the standard that we want.
Just quickly, we spoke about Ollie Peake before. Really like him. Not sure a second game should be for Australia A, just for the health of our country's batting, but really like him. Another kid, Blewie, out of Victoria called Harry Dixon, I also like. So we need some of these young kids coming through. All right, finishing 5 time. I like this. A bit more rapid fire.
Right.
All right, so you're both ready?
Yes.
I might start you here, Blewie. Fionn Mulder declaring on 367 when he had a world record in sight. Was that the right thing to do or disrespectful to Zimbabwe and the history of the game?
No, I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it was a classy decision. I like what he said after he declared and the reasons why. It just would have left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that Zimbabwe at the moment are a shocking cricket team. So I thought he showed some real respect for the game. It was a bit like us, scoring runs against Queensland, James. It didn't really, matter that much. So I was happy with it.
Oh, geez, he's come out throwing punches there. That's rubbish, Blue. Absolute rubbish. I thought it was terrific. What are you talking about? It meant that I was the second highest run scorer still. I actually liked it. It was good. I think records, though, are meant to be broken. His respect in and around the game is something which is important, but records are meant to be broken. I'd be delighted if someone came past and beat Brian or beat myself or beat whomever that's on that great tally of run scorers. Why not? I mean, that's what we challenge and agitate and push to be the best. You don't see anyone at the Olympics running the 100 metres getting slower, do you? Like everyone's trying to beat Bolt, basically. But it's like,
watching the Major League Cricket, Haydos, and these runs getting made on baseball arenas. Like, it doesn't count, mate.
All right. The second question, number 2. Harry Brook is Australia's biggest danger coming into this summer's Ashes. Haydos.
No, I don't think he is. I mean, Joe Root is the danger player. Joe Root and the captain, Stokes, if he's fit, they're the 2 key players for me. And because Root has never made 100 here, I mean, that is red rag to a bull. You talk about someone technically sound, someone able to bat long periods of times on what are pretty good tracks once you get through the new ball. The Kookaburra ball, is a ball that lasts 20 overs and then it's happy birthday, fill your boots for the next, 100 overs plus. So the reality is he's their key player.
Yeah, well, Brooks a danger player, no doubt about that. He's the beneficiary if their top order get going. If they don't, I think we can really challenge him, especially with the short ball. I reckon he's vulnerable to that ball around about that left armpit area and with our bigger grounds as well, because when he does take it on, he hits everything in the air. And I think he can be exposed that way. But I agree with Haydos. Even though Joe Root hasn't had the best of time in Australia, I think he's our biggest threat.
Australia, Blewie, got leaving Nathan Lyon out right in the third test in the West Indies, even though it was a shock for us all to see it.
Well, you'd have to say yes, because Boland played, and Boland not only got wickets, but he got a hat-trick as well. So, you know, Nathan Lyon didn't bowl much in the series at all. The games were really quick, and the swing bowling and the seam bowling really dominated the series. So you'd have to say they did get it right.
No, I don't reckon. I mean, he's our greatest off-spin bowler ever, and he would have taken wickets on that
they won the game
track
in 2.5 days.
Yeah, but mate, you'd take 5 for on that, and that's no disrespect for you. Like, you know, I just think they were a woeful batting team, unfortunately. JB, I'm sorry, but you maybe won at best 2 for you against the West Indies, that West Indies unit. But yeah, no, look, yes, they won, but I'm almost sort of dismissing anything that happened in the Caribbean. It's one of those tours at the moment. Their cricket is so average, their batting is so average that Lino would have probably taken 3 or 4 wickets easily anyway.
All right, Blewie, talk about making room for a standalone BBL, which would mean moving the Boxing Day and Sydney Test. Worth exploring?
No, not at all. I'd be absolutely amazed, but also disgusted is a strong word. But you can't move those Test matches. I'm sorry. That's an absolute, especially the Boxing Day Test. I mean, that's one of the great days in Australian sport. So it's a big no for me.
No, I'm going to use the word disgusted for sure. Like I'd be just horrified. I mean, can you imagine Christmas without Boxing Day?
No.
I mean, it's just unfathomable, right? And my problem, right, and this is even going back to the days where I was sitting as a board director, you get these consultancy companies. Now, this is Boston Consultancy Company that have come in with recommendations. Some of those recommendations are in order, for sure. For example, one was with the Big Bash League that we get some new money in, we get some equity, we get some hybrid model. Hello? I mean, that is something that the game desperately needs. If you've got someone from India or Pakistan or England or the West Indies wanting to invest into our country and have a minority sharehold 49%, you know what? You don't get your final say. Cricket will have that say. But you get all that money. That's a lot of cricket bats and balls in people's hands right across Australia. So from the get-go, I thought that was a good call. But telling us as a consultancy company how to suck eggs and for us to actually pay them a fortune, and I'm saying like a fortune, I don't agree with it. And moving the test matches, I'm telling you, I will go off my brain if they move either of the test matches, including... Can you believe it? The pink ball test match. I mean, the pink ball test match in Sydney is one of the greatest events of the sporting calendar year.
Well, pink
in
test.
Fact,
they don't use a pink ball. You mean the pink
yeah,
test?
pink test. I mean, yeah, sorry. I just think that's just an extraordinary show of solidarity around the sporting community. And it just simply can't happen.
I like it. All right, final question before we let you two gentlemen head off into your day. And I'm aiming this at you, Big Doss. If Blewie could have had his pads custom made so they didn't go twice around his legs, he wouldn't have chopped on so many times in the 90s for Australia.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, clearly the bat was getting caught, Blue, behind the pad. I mean, I'd love to see your bat and just see if the buckles. Did you have the buckles on the inside or outside?
Inside, mate. Inside.
So there would have been some serious damage to that inside blade.
The pad went so far around his legs, the buckles are on the back. Like
he needed a good fit. He needed to come to my joint. I mean, my place smells like a Texas barbecue today. I'm having enchiladas. I've got this roast on the slow cooker at the moment. Blue, you need to just have a good feed, I reckon, because those legs, mate, they'll wafer thin.
Well, Bray, I'm wondering what you did with your spare bat handles, because the way you walked, they disappeared somewhere. I don't know where, but anyway.
I'm just trying. Feedback's a gift. I'm just trying to say to you, if you'd got proper pads, you might have been able to get the bat to the ball without colliding with them.
I reckon you both should have just hit yourselves around the face a bit as well because
It's
you're
a bit
such
late now,
good-looking
mate.
roosters.
Thanks for the advice at the time.
Everyone hated you so much.
Well, while we're doing advice, Nos, for Bluey, get your tech right as well, so we don't
Yeah,
wait
any
for an
danger,
hour to
any
get on
danger,
air.
mate. We've just about not got on air because of Blewie. That twice.
Hey, listen, I've invested a lot of money in my tech, and yes, just a little setback for the first episode, but you watch me going forward, boys.
All right, you two. I love you both.
Decent set of
Enjoy the
glasses
week.
as well might be good.
The Dame Medna averages.
There you go. We can see you, but can you see us, Blue?
Oh, get a decent hat, mate.
This has been
Queenslander.
All Over Father Cricket. We'll see you next week.